Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey!
Marshall. I wish people could hear the recording before the recording, like I said the last time, because you even sounded professional. 3, 2, 1, like there's a board being clicked here or something, as if we know what we're doing.
Well, you can actually see the boom mic every now and then dip into the shot, from the gaffer. Yeah. I'm using my fancy production words.
Right.
So I'm excited because if anyone's listening to this, that means that we didn't get canceled after episode 52.
That's right.
Where we may have insulted every culturally attractive person in the world. So, and I don't know if maybe that's why we didn't get canceled, because people don't assume they're culturally attractive, or they don't want to bring attention to it by attacking people who talked about it.
And I've thought of another critique of even what we said, and not that I necessarily agree with the critique, but I'm waiting for it to show up in some of the feedback we receive. But I'll just say this, we're not developing Satan shoes or anything, but these episodes that are coming out are some of our most popular that we've ever had. So little cultural reference there, Mike, to what's going on in our world right now.
Oh, you are all about the clickbait. Nice. All right, so we're talking about the 8 universal leadership qualities according to Plato and Aristotle, Socrates, all these cool guys.
Yes.
And so we're down to, now that we've covered very good looking, which obviously we've mastered, the natural talent for studies.
Yeah, so this is the one where, to me, it starts to get complicated, because you can't just say this on the surface value. We could just say, you want to be a great leader, you need to be a learner. Learners are leaders. You hear people say, not every reader is a leader, but every leader is a reader. It's that kind of we could just keep it at the surface level and say, yeah, you need to improve yourself. But Plato is actually going a step deeper, and to talk about that, we'll have to just remind everybody that this fictitious republic that Socrates and his friends are creating in Plato's book, The Republic, is to give us an analogy for the person. And there's the head, the heart, and the gut of the person, just as in this fictitious republic, there's a philosopher who's the king, and there are the guardians who help him. And then there's the rabble, everybody else who has all these appetites and desires and has to be kept in check. Well, how do you educate the head and the heart? How do you educate the king and the guardians who are going to help him execute the law, is sort of the question on the table. And we're in the middle of all these characteristics that identify. Well, so he gets into talking about the guardian shortly before he lists these 8 principles, these 8 characteristics. And he basically says, well, wait a minute, we want somebody who's going to be fierce and passionate and courageous, just like we talked about in the second characteristic, right? That there's got to be some courage there. But he can't be that all the time. Like, that's got to be only towards the enemies of the republic. He's got to be gentle to the citizens. And so he hits on this analogy. He says, wait a minute, it's just like a good dog. So Mike, I'm going to throw it to you. I did not prep you for this hardly at all. I basically just told you we might talk about something you're interested in. You have been involved in shelter dog efforts for some time with your daughter. Could you talk a little bit about, is it really true that a dog has some natural inclinations to be protective of its pack and its family, and to be fierce towards everything else? Is that a fair assessment of a dog to you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. No, we've been blessed to be involved with a lot of dogs, and coming from various backgrounds and things like that. So one of the things you see is and you hear the term territorial. And so yeah, if this is my space, and this is my pack.
Yeah.
Once I've determined that, if anything looks like it's threatening to that space or that pack, a member of my pack, yeah, I'm ferocious. Right. It goes back to, like you said, number 2, courage.
Yeah.
The display, and even little tiny dogs display
Right.
courage well beyond their weight class.
Yes. Yes.
So, but at the same time, within the pack, right, there's an incredible amount of love.
Yeah.
There's sharing of food, there's sharing of resources.
Yeah.
Even at this animal level, you see acts of caring, and sometimes we attribute human characteristics to animals, but
Sure.
from where we're standing, that's what it looks like when there's a warm spot on the bed and you let your fellow pack member lay on that spot, even though it's crowding you out. Right, there's something going on there, and so there is tremendous ferocity, but also within the pack there's tremendous care and tremendous love.
Okay, so let me read you a little piece of how he describes this, and I hope I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he basically says that this is sort of similar. Dogs are sort of similar to these guardians, okay, and it's in that they love learning.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the weird thought. He says they get fierce with strangers even before the slightest harm has been done them, and they welcome familiar people even if they've never been benefited by them. Like you think of like the baby born into the family, right? Immediately a part of the pack, right? Almost immediately a part of the pack. Has this never struck you as surprising? And he says, but don't you think that this feature shows how naturally smart they are and how genuinely they love knowledge? And Socrates' friend says, how? And he says, because their sole criterion for the friendliness or hostility of what they see is whether or not they have learned to recognize it.
Ooh.
Now, anything that relies on familiarity and unfamiliarity to define what is congenial and what is alien must prize learning, mustn't it? Right? So learning is the same thing as loving knowledge, he says. But this idea that they can tell what's friendly and what's hostile based on whether they have learned to recognize it. So if they're familiar or unfamiliar with something, allows them to know, whether or not it's something there to foster or to push away, right? And again, we're talking about the guardians of this republic. We're talking about our hearts that have all this passion and fierceness and courage and drive to help us get the thing done. We've talked about the elephant and the driver. This is that elephant, but the elephant has been trained. The guardian dog has been trained to recognize the good and make sure we pursue that and attack anything else that's going to get in the way of that. Does that resonate with you the way it does me?
It does, right? It's very powerful. To continue with your dog analogy, we'll at the shelter we'll get in a stray, and if I'm wearing a baseball style cap and I walk up to that stray, it immediately just teeth bared, hair raised, just wants to kill me. And I can leave, take off the hat, walk back, dog's perfectly fine.
Huh.
So at some point in its really tough past, you can assume that somebody in a baseball hat created a threat to this animal.
That makes a ton of sense.
And it's ready. It's like, if you're wearing a hat, we're gonna have to go at it. So, and if you're not, obviously you're a friend, and I've experienced other humans without hats who've shown me love,
right?
And I've learned from that, and that's part of my knowledge base, which also determines my behavior.
Right. And you think about where this shows up in an organization. Teams that have made an effort to get really clear on their values, and everybody's familiar with their values because they've taught it. Everybody has learned it. They've really applied themselves. They've taken some time outs to come up with this, vision and values and purpose, whatever it is, these statements that explain what they're about, what's good to that organization. Man, their decision making is so much faster. Their teamwork is so much more seamless. The actions that they give off are the right actions to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, because they know what to say no to, right? Steve Jobs said something along those lines, that he was as proud of what they said no to as what they said yes to at Apple, because they knew what they were about, right? They knew that they were out to change the world in this particular way. And so if it got in the way of that, if it wasn't the best way to do that, forget it. Be an attack dog against that thing. And I think that's sort of where the dog analogy meets the modern organization.
Oh, definitely.
Well, podcast about this, but I love it. So
we saw this in the pandemic. So staff, you cut back staff in different places to sometimes it was just the manager. There were no team members.
Right.
And then as things started to ramp back up, they brought back people. Well, and it was interesting just to see, one, who did they bring back first? Right. Who's that? Right. If you can only keep one team member, right? It's just you and a team member to do the entire department. Who are you going to bring back first? Yeah. And it was the person that you talked about, the person who understood the vision, the mission, the values, was a quick study, was completely engaged. And so they brought them back. And then they brought back the second person, the third person, the fourth person. And as they got farther along, at some point, managers told me there was a tipping point.
Yeah.
We're bringing back that less engaged person who didn't quite get what the organization was trying to accomplish.
Yep.
Actually set the organization back.
Yeah.
Right. Errors went up. Things were taking longer with the addition of this person, and so it was really this eye-opening, ability to.
Even though they all have a capacity issue and need more bodies.
Yeah.
There were people that they couldn't bring back.
Yeah, they weren't bringing them back because they did need them. They absolutely needed them, and they were all worn out. And yet the addition of a person who wasn't part of the pack, who didn't get it, was actually a detriment to providing service or to creating a return on investment.
That's really good. And so we're going to sort of jump back and forth here, but so if that general concept makes sense, let me just quote Plato on what he actually says about this idea of learning. He'd been talking about these people that are good and solid. They're reliable, they're courageous, and they're very good looking. And if you want to learn more about that, listen to the last 3 episodes. But he says, in addition to that, they have to have a natural talent for these studies. And he says they must be sharp and quick at learning. You see physical exercise as far less appalling to the mind than intense intellectual work, since intellectual work is more exclusively mental. It belongs to the mind rather than being shared with the body. So he's making a point that all the stuff we're talking about is quite painful. I mean, it is not something that we relish doing. The analogy you and I know have used from almost day one is, you need to change your tire. Well, you don't do that while you're driving down the interstate. Even if you're late for a meeting, you pull over, right? And so what we've got here is, hey, Mr. Leader, I know you want to go do stuff. I know you want to go accomplish things. Take a break. Go think a bunch. Go get clear on a lot of these things. Won't that be great? Won't you just super enjoy that, like not accomplishing anything at your organization and instead thinking through things? And yet that's the powerful aspect of leadership here, is the ability to do that.
Oh, yeah. Well, we get thanked all the time.
Don't we, though?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. This is one of our great contributions is we show up in an organization that's running 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And we make them stop for an hour, stop for 45 minutes, and just think about what are the possibilities? What are the next steps? What do you want this to ultimately be? Yep. And they always thank us at the end. While they're catching up on all the stuff that piled up while we were doing these things, they're always like, "This was so helpful. You show up, you make us pull our heads up and look around and figure out where we're really going, and that is immensely valuable." And you're like, you could easily do this without me,
right?
But because of the whirlwind and everything, you forget to do it, and then all of a sudden it's weeks, and then it's months, and then it's years before you've really stopped to think about
Yeah.
What am I doing, and how could it be better, and what we could be doing? What's the next step? What's the ultimate vision of this?
I may have brought this up, but the most backhanded, wonderful compliment I've ever received, a dealer announced to his management team. He said, having Mark here is like going to church. My wife wants me to go, and I don't want to go. And then after I've gone, I always feel better. I was like, thank you. Yeah, but he's right. I mean, he's absolutely right. And one of our mentors, Greg Tansky, both of us have a deep love for Greg Tansky and his work in organization development. And he always told me, Mark, don't ever get too big for your britches. You are an excuse for them to have a conversation that they need to have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tansky was a Peter Senge disciple. So here's the fifth discipline itself, Peter Senge's, seminal work. And the idea, the subheading says it all: the art and practice of the learning organization. And Senge's, I'm no expert, but Senge's basic point is, look, the best organizations actually do learn as a system inside themselves and inside the system of whatever market they're in, et cetera, et cetera. And there are these 5 disciplines that if you're truly a learning organization, you're going to do. Well, first off, learning organization, that's what Plato is talking about here is learning. But 2 of the, I pulled out a couple quotes here. 2 of these disciplines that allow you to be a learning organization is mental models, working with mental models, which might even mean like some of the mental models you work with are assumptions. Like here's one in the car dealership world: buyers are liars. How true is that, right? Turn a mirror on yourself, and how true is that statement? And are you willing to have a dialogue about that where you maybe adjust your opinions? Which leads to another one of the disciplines, which is team learning. Literally having the dialogue and having the sort of the, if you will, the humility to sort of have a back and forth and maybe adjust your opinions so that you learn as a team instead of just yourself. We could talk about Senge all day long, but basically what he's getting at there is the idea of learning being key to moving forward and doing it with some practices and habits that Plato probably would appreciate.
Oh yeah. I remember one of the most powerful meetings I was ever a part of. The owner walks in and he looks at his leadership team and says, "Listen, we're going to do something, and I don't know exactly how we're going to do it. And I need all of you to share with me your ideas. I will ultimately make the decision on which direction and how we go about it. But at this point, I don't know how to do it."
Oh, that's great.
And man, we just had, all these ideas come forth, and it was there was semi consensus around an idea, the story, and we just moved forward, and it was just killer, right? The execution, the engagement after that was amazing. And it wasn't, he wasn't playing, he wasn't just, setting his team up to try and get more feedback. He literally didn't know how to do this. But he was in this case, like our number 2 quality, courage. He had the courage to say, "I don't know, and I need your help."
Right.
And everybody just leaned in. I mean, you couldn't help but want to be a part of whatever was going to happen next.
Yeah. I love that because, I don't want people to think that a lot of this classical thought that we're sort of bringing forward in the podcast is like a trick or a manipulation tool. It's kind of the opposite. But the byproduct is that he was willing to do a good thing and be honest and genuine with his people. And he was willing to do a good thing and bring them into the conversation and include them and, not treat them like they were just cogs in his machine. And that was the right thing to do, right? That was good. That was good leadership. That was morally good leadership, I would argue.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
definitely.
The benefit, the impact, the result was that he got buy-in. He got an organization that improved. He got, all these things that, you can go listen to a million other podcasts that'll, how to get buy-in. I mean, you could go chase down how to manipulate your way to success if that's all you wanted to do. But the idea here is that all of these good things roll out of doing the good thing.
Mhm. Well, and as we've always seen, the values of the leaders ultimately become the value of the organization.
That's right.
And so if you as a leader demonstrate the value of learning, curiosity, that I know that I can be more, do more,
Right.
then that will become a value within your organization.
Yes.
And so when you meet somebody and they're always talking about the latest book they read, the most recent TED Talk, how they've implemented some things from that, what you typically find is the people that have been around them a long time, they're also reading and learning and studying and doing those types of things.
Well, you know what, and to wrap us up on that, we're back to talking about dogs, aren't we? I mean, because the same thing at that organization happens to the counter. You know, somebody comes in and isn't that way and is, you know, sort of command and control and, you know, calling shots or disparaging another department. And if they've got this good set of values trickling down from leadership, you know, some of the guardian dogs, the attack dogs in that organization, some of the chief lieutenants are going to say, whoa, that's not how we do things around here. And push out what's going to be an enemy of that organization, those bad behaviors, bad values.
Oh yeah, the people closest, you know, on the same level or slightly below that person, always know well before the pack leader that this is not a good fit.
Yeah, right.
You know, they always know. They're like, you know, first of all, they question, why did we bring him into the pack? You know, who let this guy in? You know, there's that question. And then it's, okay, how long are they going to let this person stay?
Yeah.
You know, because they obviously don't fit. They're counter to our values, and they're causing disruption on the team that isn't positive. And so, you know, at some point, yeah, it has to get to the person who can make a decision to say, okay, yeah, maybe this isn't a good fit. We're either going to try them in a part of our organization where they will fit, or they need to go find an organization where they're more aligned. Values wise.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And yeah, I mean, just practically speaking, you know, there are some ways to start implementing this. You know, have you clarified what you're about? You know, do you have a value statement, a vision? Not so much a vision statement, but like, you know, what's the vision? What are, you know, why are you in existence, and what are you hoping to accomplish? And then, you know, have you really taken time to test your assumptions? You know, have you asked in a meeting, you know, what are we assuming here to be true that may not be true? And given your team a chance to be like that leader and say, I just don't know, you know, let's dialogue about this. Those are powerful. So any more that you'd add to that, Mike?
Well, there's a new book out called Think Again by Adam Grant. And it's all about examples of people who didn't, you know, and organizations who didn't rethink their assumptions, and some of the bad things that happened to them, as well as organizations like Apple. Steve Jobs was not going to do a phone. He was vehemently opposed to a phone, and his engineers and people kept coming to him. He says, no, he says, phones are not Apple. You have to deal with the carriers and their restrictions, and we can't ever do a phone that
it's a
lives
fully
up
Apple ecosystem
to the whole Apple values.
Right.
And then once they showed him how they could get the carriers to adapt to what he was trying to do, then and only then did he approve the phone. So there was learning at different levels. The vision, right? He was protecting the vision, and until they could do it in a way that aligned with the vision, he was against it. And you know, the rest is history. Within a few years of the iPhone's release, it accounted for 50% of the company's profits. So that ability to retest your assumptions, to question, okay, is what I believed previously still true? And if not, what's changed? And then what do I need to do to adapt to the new reality?
All of this will take slowing down to learn. That's the, you know, the hard part of what you'll have to get used to, Mr. or Miss Leader, is the fact that you will have to slow down to do this. But you slow down to speed up.
Yep. Yeah, as they say in my house, fast is slow, slow is fast.
I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Well, this is pretty good stuff. Excited for the next episode, and I know our announcer is completely amazed at everything that we've talked about. So let's see what he's got to say.
So go ahead and tweet that, or share it any other way you want. As always, there are no rights reserved, no trademarks, no copyrights. Share it if you want to. And join us next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius.
That's good enough.